Hello, everybody. Welcome back after a long week of Force of Will to the Teacher's Lounge, your favorite ever live Force of Will podcast featuring myself, Jeremy Franklin, as always, and Ryan Miles.
This is definitely my favorite live Force of Will podcast, yeah.
Brandan Bremont.
This is definitely my favorite haircut Ryan's ever had.
And Frank Glosser.
I didn't have a favorite prepared, I'm sorry.
You're my favorite Frank.
That is dangerously close to insulting the rest of the world's Franks.
So today...
I know Frank Classic, and he would be disappointed, Jeremy.
Sorry. So with Worlds coming up, we've talked a little bit about all the cards. We've talked a little bit about what we hope comes out of the CRs, so we hope that we will probably talk about the CR at some point tonight. But we wanted to spend tonight talking about going back to kind of what this podcast normally does, which is to help you as a player improve. And so a big part of that is, as we go into this new season, there are going to be many of you who are joining the game or who are wanting to step up your game and start to compete in a more competitive element rather than just at your locals or state events. So we want to talk about things to know, things to do, things to help yourself prepare for your first ever GP, or even just if you're a regular, things that you might not be already doing that you could do to help yourself, I don't know, be more mentally and physically sound on a day of a GP. So Brandon, you were kind of the one who brought this topic up to us. So why don't you kind of lead us off with your thoughts about this idea?
So I don't know what the competitive history of everyone else is, but I played competitive Magic for about 5 or 6 years now. When I was a wee tot in high school is when I first started doing it, and I was an anxious young thing, and I definitely did not go to my first few competitive Magic events with the right state of mind or with the right preparation that I would hope that other people would have. And so I thought this would be a good topic that you could either take in yourself or share with any of your new friends that are coming into the game, or just have something to think about. So I kind of summarized it into 5 different points that I would tell myself back when I was first starting to get into competitive card games, and what I think that everyone else should consider. And do you want me to just read all 5, or do you want to go one at a time? Or what?
I think let's kind of go one at a time. I would agree with you, and kind of speaking to my competitive background, I played Yu-Gi-Oh! Very casually and then tried to get competitive and played at the local level and went to my very first regional, and I can very much attest to anxiety and just some personal stuff that I had going on, not really being in that sound state, really did affect my performance and really did affect my experience at that event. So I think this topic is really, really important for people to recognize, because I think ultimately you should be able to walk away from an event, win or lose, and still see it as a good experience. And there are definitely things that we can do as people ahead of time and prepping for the event mentally, physically, to make sure that happens. So I also think this is a super important topic. Frank, Ryan, any thoughts?
Actually, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about like how I got into card games. I know a lot of people see me as like the super good pro player, ho ho ho, but like I remember back when I was in high school learning Yu-Gi-Oh! And I was not a natural card game player. I was playing like just literally whatever cards I could get my hands on because I was a poor high school student, and just I remember like slowly grinding the ranks of like just going to competitive events and then getting close to topping competitive events and then actually topping a competitive event, and then like just the slow progression. And like I think the biggest thing for me was just like having rival friends that also wanted to get better, that like we just fed off of each other to constantly climb that ladder. But I remember my first competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Event, and it was an experience. So I'm excited to talk about like that kind of stuff.
I've been playing card games for 3 years now, and so Force of Will was my first series of actual competitive events.
Cool.
Okay, yeah, so lots of different backgrounds.
I also have a little 16-year-old brother who just started playing competitive card games too. Force Will is his first one, and so these are problems that I would want to impose upon him as well, things to consider. So that's the background here. So the very first point that I think is probably the most important one to keep in mind is you're there to have fun, and it's important to figure out what that means to you. And the important thing there is, if you're a competitive player, if you're someone who puts a lot of precipice on winning, you should go into it with that competitive mindset. You should think about what you're going to do to win. You're going to think about playing the best deck. You're not going to do things other than playing the best deck, because you really want to maximize the amount of fun that you're having there. You want to avoid situations that are going to cause you to not have fun in that environment, which is to say, being unprepared, bringing bad decks, that kind of thing. And also go into it understanding that it is just a game. Go into it ready to have a good time. Don't go into it thinking that I'm just going to have no fun at all if I don't win.
Yeah, I would say. Go ahead. Go ahead.
If I can add to that, I would also say, if you're the competitive person, like your end goal is to eventually like work your way up and top 8 an event, win an event, and so this is your first time going to a GP. Like this may sound like setting the bar low, but I would also suggest set yourself some smaller goals as well. Like, be aware that like it can take work or a couple iterations to get there. So set yourself some intermediate goals as well, so that you can like track your progress. See that you're not just like flailing around, but you're actually succeeding and improving and working towards your end goal of victory.
Yep. I would say from I think that's super huge. I'll speak to Frank's point first, and then I'll kind of give my thoughts to what Brandon said. In terms of realistic goals, I have had in Michigan, we're at a pretty interesting point where we're having a lot of players taking the step from locals and states to wanting to do GPs and wanting to do circuit series at more of a travel event and wanting to go move. So like we're seeing a lot of players like launch in that direction. And I think one of the things that I've been telling people, and I've gotten a lot of feedback that it helped them enjoy the events more, is I say, especially the way Forceville GPs are structured, there's like 3 goals. Goal number 1 is to I'll wait for Frank to stop clicking his keyboard very loudly.
Sorry.
Push and talk, Frank.
Goal number 1 is to have a positive record. So like end the day with more wins than losses. That's like, I think, a good starting goal. Like for your first ever GP, like that's solid. Like having a greater than 50% win rate, good job. I think the next launching point from that is to, in this stance of Forceville, get a top cut promo. Like make it to top 16 or the bigger events where it's been top 32 or whatever. Like walk away from the event with a promo that not everybody got for entering. Like that says, yep, you're getting there, you're on the right track, you're improving, you're able to start moving that way. And then you start to get into like then top 8, then top 4, then finals, then win, that kind of thing. I think it's, in my span in Yu-Gi-Oh, I walked into my very first regional event saying like, I got a top. Like I want a top. Like top. And I didn't have a good time because it didn't happen. And I ended up going even split losses and wins. And I can definitely equate that my second couple rounds of losses were because I was so focused on trying to top that when I was out of that contention, I was off my game, I was angry, I was irritable, and I walked away from that event not having a good time. I was miserable.
My big thing for events has always just been, I've always wanted to bring at least one original idea to an event and then do well with it. Like back when I started, like, I've always just been like addicted to deck building and just like trying, like, I don't care about playing card games. I just want to like look at your entire card pool and then figure out what the most interesting and creative thing that I can do is. So when I was in Yu-Gi-Oh, I never played meta because A, it was too goddamn expensive, but B, because I knew that I wanted to prove to myself and to everyone else that I could bring an off-meta deck or bring something that was less expensive than just, you know, pay to win. And I wanted to top an event. And even in Forceville, for like most of my career, that has been like what I've been trying to do. The difference is, like, my first event was Bahamut, and the only deck to play was Bahamut. And that kind of brings me to this point where when I first started Forceville, I literally picked up the game 2 weeks before my first Grand Prix. And it was because my brother had played an event. He's like, hey, play this game. And I'm like, oh, there's a Grand Prix in 2 weeks. I can go to Japan. Hell yeah. So I just boot camped for 2 weeks. Every single day I was playing Forceville. And I was playing it with this coworker of mine that had never played a card game before in his life. And I'm just like teaching him the rules as I'm learning the rules and just putting him across the table from me so I can have someone to beat up while I'm like learning the game and like learning the matchup by myself. But he's also playing Bahamut and then like getting into the game. So I ended up doing pretty well. I ended up getting ninth at the event, and it's like, all right, that's good. This is a good thing. I feel very confident about how I played. I feel great. And then he obviously didn't do as well because he had literally been playing card games for exactly 2 weeks. But he ended up getting like 130th, and his thing was that he placed in the top 50% of players. So out of 300 people, he got 130 something. And like just getting in the top half after just starting the game, that was his like big win. Just like pick a like. Think about where you are skill-wise in a room of 100 people. Like, pick where you think you should be ending up. Because if you're in the if you're just in the top 50% of players in the room, like skill wise, or even like just deck choice wise, and just like assess that. Be like, when you go to a 60-person event and you make top 32, like that's a good accomplishment that I think that like is a goal you should set for yourself.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah, I would also say to kind of loop back around to Brandon's initial point of like trying to have fun. I think that a big portion of that is to try to not go alone. Because I can speak to the fact that like it is much harder to have fun if you're not doing well, if you were at least getting to hang out with people that you enjoy being around.
Have someone to tell your bad beat stories too.
Exactly. Yeah. It is miserable. It is absolutely miserable to go to an event by yourself, do poorly, and just not talk to anyone. Not like laugh about it, not like process about it. You just sit in your anger and it sucks. So like always try to get, if you're to make your event, win or lose, more enjoyable, go with people. Go with people you know. And like have like that just naturally makes it way easier to have fun when you're at the event, win or lose.
I can definitely attest to this. I've never gone to a card game event alone just because like I just never done it. So but I've started playing poker and I cannot for the life of me get any of my friends into poker. So I went to a poker tournament like this weekend. I'm just by myself. I have such low understanding of like poker etiquette and I'm just like making mistakes and the table's like, oh, what are you doing? Are you new here? And I'm like, yeah, I'm new here. Like, what do you want from me? And it's just, I want to play the game, but it's miserable.
To the table, just do it. That I am literally the most annoying person to play poker with in the entire world because I just talk the entire time.
That's fine. I have no idea what I'm doing. I just wish I had a friend to be like, hey man, what am I like? Can we talk? Or just like, no, I'm just alone. I'm being ganged up on by random people who want to take my money, and then they take my money, and then I leave, and I'm like, all right. It's just
yeah, it was super fun. Yeah, I remember. I went to my very first ever Yu-Gi-Oh! Regional. I went with my wife, who my wife drove me, and she went to go like check out local libraries and stuff while I played in this event. And so I was in this super cramped 300+ Yu-Gi-Oh! Regional. And like I knew people who had traveled there, but none of them were like, oh yeah, I'm super close to these people, because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like super cliquey, at least in that area of Michigan. So it's like, okay, I can't really hang out with anybody. And it was awful, and I had to drive home that night. It was a 2.5-hour drive, and I didn't get to hang out with anybody all day, and my wife was not hanging out with me because she didn't want to be in a super cramped room with 300 sweaty nerds. Go figure.
That's my fetish.
So that experience was awful, and then I had to drive home for 2.5 hours in a blizzard, and I was just like sitting there in my anger, and like it was not. But if I had gone with friends, we could have been like joking and like hanging out and goofing off, and it wouldn't have been so bad to be in this room full of 300 people who have no idea who I am.
You say all this, but you went back. You're still playing card games, so
I went back to I never played Yu-Gi-Oh! At a major event ever again after that event.
Oh, okay. That was a killer event. Yeah.
That was a killer event. I never went back to Yu-Gi-Oh! After that point.
So point number 2, Brandon.
All right. So I was going to put this as number 1, but then I thought I had to be like cliche and say have fun is number 1. But the real number 1 is judges are your friends and you should call them. This is absolutely the case. So Frank over here is a judge. I'm not anymore. But when you have a problem in any capacity, a rules problem, an issue with your opponent, an issue with your deck, not understanding something about the game, wondering like if it's okay for you to go to the bathroom or not, just call a judge. Believe me, they do not have any, like most of the time, judges that I talk to after events say they wish people had called more because they were bored. The very common thing at these events, just call them for everything. You will always regret it if you don't. I mean, the first few events that my brothers went to, at least once in both events, my brothers came up to me after the round and said something to the effect of like, well, this and this happened, and I wasn't really sure if this is how it was supposed to go. And I had to say, like, that's not how it was supposed to go. Why didn't you call a judge? And some people think that, like, oh, it's rude. They don't want to, like, make it seem like they're accusing their opponent. They don't want to cause anyone any trouble. They don't want to be embarrassed because it looks like they don't know the rules. Get all of that out of your head. If you have anything at all that does not go exactly as you think it should be going, call a judge. And also as a tangential side note to this, if the judge comes over and you don't understand what they said, or you think that maybe what they said is wrong, appeal to the head judge. That's also not rude. The judge there understands that that is a privilege that the players all get. They will not think it's rude. They will not hate you. They'll give you a time extension. It's not like it affects your opponent. You're not stalling. No one's going to accuse you of that. Judges are your friend, and the community calls them way too less, and don't be a part of that.
I think every friend that I've brought to an event, if they have any bad beat story, and I'm like, oh, what'd the judge say? And they're like, oh, I didn't call a judge. And I'm like, oh, God, but like, if you have any sort of like inconsistency with what your brain thinks is going to happen and what your opponent says is going to happen, then you just call a judge. Or if you just like literally have any like gray area on what you think should happen in like a sequence of events, you just call a judge. And if the judge comes over and they say something and you're like, that kind of makes sense, and because you said the word kinda, then you appeal it every single time, because there's no reason not to. Like, it's just, you want the definitive ruling on every play that's going on. And it's just what you do. It's what I do. It's what Brandan does. It's what any competitive player does. Is if there's any discrepancy about anything, you just call a judge.
Yeah, and it's not necessary. It's not disrespectful to your opponent to do so. I think, like Brandan said, it's something that people see it as two things: disrespectful or embarrassing, and it shouldn't be either of those things. Disrespect your opponent. So ultimately, when you're sitting down to play a game with your opponent, you are not playing. You are not.
Oh, Jeremy?
Jeremy.
Hello, am I back? What happened?
Well, that's
Hello.
I say we probably lost the stream.
No, I says I'm still here. Can you guys hear me? Am I
back?
Hey,
I can hear you again.
Yeah, that's super weird. I don't know what happened there. I'm back. So it shouldn't be disrespectful or embarrassing. One, because when you sit down to play with your opponent, you are engaging with your opponent in a game together. So you have a responsibility, as is your opponent, to uphold the rules and uphold the situation and uphold the sanctity of the game. And so part of that is making sure that the rules are enforced correctly. So, which is part of the reasons why calling a judge helps you to do that. You are literally doing your piece, your obligation as a player, to uphold the state of the game by calling a judge if you're unsure. Because that it's not saying that you don't know, it's just saying you want to hold this game to the utmost standard, and calling a judge helps you do that. One of the things that I see a lot of people do is, like, in terms of like, oh, what is like slow play especially, it's like, you don't have to call a judge over to come watch because you accuse your opponent of slow playing. You can call your judge over to watch to see, hey, this feels like it's going a little bit too slow, and we need to uphold the state of the game because we only have 50 minutes. I'd like a judge to just watch and second my opinion or tell me, no, this is a fine pace of play. Like, you're not calling a judge against your opponent, you're calling a judge to support the game. And that's two very different mindsets. And I think that really does help. Getting into that mindset of calling a judge is not against your opponent, it's calling a judge to uphold the game, greatly changes how you see judges, and I think really helps you a lot in the long term.
It will also like help you understand judges, because like our stated goal, like, because judges do nothing but talk to each other all the time, and our stated goal is to make sure that the game goes as correctly as possible with basically we want to do everything we can to make sure the game reaches as close to the conclusion it should as possible. So, like, calling yourself over, like, we're here to help, we're here to make sure that things go smoothly for both players. And also, like, I would also say, don't be super afraid that you're going to be, like, necessarily harshly penalized for calling us over. Like, our goal is not to just come over and be like, oh yeah, time to wreck up this game state. Our goal is just to make sure the game resolves the way it's supposed to.
Also, moderately try gently. Sometimes people don't call things because they think that they did something wrong and they don't want to get a penalty. Like, you draw your opening hand when you see sideboard cards from the last game, and then you might not want to call a judge. Well, A, that's cheating. B, if you call yourself as soon as you get something, judges always try to give the lowest possible penalty that is possibly accessible. So if the game can be repaired without giving any player an advantage, they always attempt to do that. And you calling it the moment you see it gives them the best possible route to doing that.
Yeah, the fewer steps there are to repair, the lower the penalty. Like, that's just straight up how it goes. And to be honest, most of the time, there are penalties in Forza that can never be upgraded. So sometimes you can get into penalties like failure to maintain game state. Like, I've seen people who go like, oh, this shouldn't happen this way. I just caught it. Oh, but I don't want to get a warning. Call it. You're going to get a failure to maintain game state warning. That's fine. But, like, it's repairable. And failure to maintain warnings never upgrade. So, okay. Worst comes to worst. Worst comes to worst.
The other advice I would give you is don't limit this just to your game itself. If you have a question before the event, a question during the event, heck, if you're 2 weeks after the event and you have a question, feel free to like PM one of the judges or go to judge questions and ask us a question. Like, we are here to help.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's I mean, in all honesty, for most of us, we are obsessively enjoy it. Like, it's
oh yeah,
a little startling for some of us.
Let me explain to you exactly what a judge is. A judge is a person who loves Force of Will so much that they have read the entire rule book back to front 3 times over, taken a test to prove that they understand the rules, and then elect not to play it because they just want to talk about the game and theorize about it. Like, if you bring a judge over, if you just want to talk to a judge, you're just like, hey, judge, what's going on? What do you think about X card? They will write you a fucking thesis about that card and why it's amazing lore-wise or why it's amazing in this format that no one's heard of. Like, every judge will do that, I promise you. Like, these are some of the most approachable people you will ever meet in your entire life, let alone Force of Will. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not.
You're not. There is a reason why, like, I would have to go find actual statistics, but a large number of, like, the alternative and obscure formats were made by judges. Like, for those not familiar with its history, like, Commander in Magic was made by probably one of the highest-ranked judges in the game's history.
Yeah.
So, yeah, point 3,
right.
Brandon.
Number 3, be healthy, and that's many factors there. Wake up at a comfortable time. I always suggest wearing a layer, eat breakfast, and drink water. So wake up at a comfortable time. What that means is, well, first of all, the other half of that is go to bed at a reasonable time.
What is
you're
sleep?
all right. You're all adults. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. If you want to go out and you know, have fun until 2 in the morning, that's totally fine. But just recognize that that's going to affect your GP performance. And if that's a trade you're willing to make, then take it, of course. But if you are the kind of person that really wants to do as well as possible, I recommend going to bed at an early time, getting up early enough that you are not just rolling out of bed and walking into the GP. I usually try to be up at least an hour and a half before the event. That lets me get up, walk around, stretch, make sure I'm completely awake for the event. And then wear a layer. Sometimes those GP halls can be very cold. And so I live in Arizona. It was 117 this past week on average, and I loved it because I am a very hot. I enjoy the heat.
Oh,
a lot.
say it! No, say it.
He's
Going into
he's in Arizona right now wearing a beanie.
He's a very hot
I don't
person.
own
There
a
you go.
hat.
right now, but and I'm wearing a hat in Arizona. I do it all the time. But anyway, so like in Minnesota, I was absolutely freezing because I was just wearing basically something like this, and I really should have been wearing layers. And I try now to wear at least some coat that I can take off, slip on, slip off at every event, because the room will start very cold when you first get there, and then a bunch of bodies will get in, and it'll get really hot. So you really want to be able to adjust how comfortable you are in the heat, and that'll actually help you a lot more than anyone gets it credit for. Eat breakfast. That should be self-explanatory. Getting something in your body just helps your body jumpstart. I'm not a nutritionist, but I promise that it works that way in some capacity. And then drink water. You should have a bottle of water with you throughout the day, and you should be ready to hydrate. Take bathroom breaks excessively. You don't want to hold urine. That can make you very uncomfortable. It makes it very hard to play the game well. Don't laugh at that, Ryan. It's a real suggestion.
Oh, I know. I'm just loving the we're going like deep into medical terminology to get some.
I'm just being like, I want everyone to be healthy. I want you to be the best you can be, and that involves taking your own body seriously.
And don't drink soda.
This is a strategy
because it's a
podcast.
dehydrator.
We're talking about anime card games with like panda titties, but like at the end of the day, back up. You're a real human being, and you need to take care of yourself for these events.
100% agreed. 100%
I
agreed.
can definitely
On top
talk
of
about
this, I would suggest bringing like emergency food. Like bring yourself like whatever your preferred like little thing is, like a granola bar, a little bit of jerky, something like that. Because there are times where you're going to get hungry, and it's going to be in like round 4. And round 4, you went all the way to time, and you have 5 minutes while they're posting the next round to get
and
something in you.
Hungry.
Yeah, like
power through that shit. I'm a little
eat a granola
superstitious.
bar.
I never eat during events because when you digest food, it slows down your brain because your body is devoting resources to digesting. And it's my own superstition. I don't recommend it. And it's probably good to eat like something that's like a snack food, like a granola bar. Not like any potato chips or nonsense, but like maybe even an apple's probably good. But I just don't eat. I just power through 8 rounds. And that's why I love Forcible, because we only have like 7 rounds. Like when I played Yu-Gi-Oh! It was like 10 rounds day one. And
Ooh,
I
gross.
died. It was awful.
Yeah, I remember those
So
days.
I'm gonna cut straight through Ryan's superstition because I have science. So they've done
Science.
Anytime I eat food, I want to go to bed. So I know that.
For these studies, they tested judges in Germany, like actual like court judges in Germany, whose job is to be on point, and they found that like if they gave the judges a similar packet of cases to give, like can they get an appeal or not, they gave it to them right before lunch, say 11 to 11:30, and they gave one of them right after lunch, 1 to 1:30, and they had marked differences in a very similar packet in their results from the judges, because being hungry massively changes how your mind works. You get more amped up, you get more angry, you get less prone to calming down and thinking, and like as much as you're like, oh, it makes you sleepy, like being like you're not going to be in the zone if your body's trying to drain off resources to not starve in its own mindset.
Gotcha. I think I'm able to like tune that out. It's just like a personal thing. So it's a question of, can you tune out being tired from eating, or can you tune out being hungry? And then which one works better for you? That's like, so on my daily mileage series.
Hungry, though, right? It's about being energized. And so just having like a protein bar or something, that's all I eat. I try to get like a granola bar or something like that before the day starts. Just
Plugging your video series that you stopped doing, Ryan?
Yeah, when I'm hyper focused, I still go hungry. But yeah, let me plug in my video series that I stopped doing called The Daily Mileage.
Yeah.
Episode 3 is basically
daily for like 2 weeks.
It was 18 days, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But,
good job.
yeah,
you made it
almost
almost a month. I'm proud of you.
I didn't make it as long as I wanted to, but we'll bring it back. It just turned into this podcast where I was talking about how much I hate Charizard every episode, so. Anyway. Yeah, so I'm a big proponent of just trying to, like, when your body is healthy and when you have taken proper care of yourself, especially in the 24 hours leading up to and in the hours during an event, like, your brain just functions better. Like, you're a person, you're a soul inside of a body, you beautiful human. No, you're electrical chemicals talking to each other inside of your goddamn brain dome, all right? That's all you are. That is what you are as a human. And the faster and better that those cells can talk to each other, that's how much better you get at card games. That is how the world works. That's how you exist. So you want to do everything in your power to hack your chemical system and just make your brain talk to itself better. And the way you do that is by sleeping enough, by eating enough, by eating the correct foods that your brain wants, like brain foods, and then you just stay hydrated. Because when you're not hydrated, like, that's the absolute worst thing you can do. Like, drink a fuck ton of water during the event, go to the bathroom as much as you need to, according to Bremont, but just make sure that you're drinking like a water bottle. Like, when I'm at an event, I'm in the bathroom all the time because I'm drinking like a bottle of water or 2 every single round. Like, just every round I'm drinking water, because that is how your brain functions. It needs water to make electrical signals do things. And if you want to get better at card games, just don't drink soda, drink water in an event, and you'll just be like, wow, I'm a hyper genius. How did this happen?
Yeah, one of the things that I've been doing lately, and I haven't tried it at an event, is well, I guess that's not true. I did it at Denver when I was doing the stream for Denver, and I actually found myself, one, going to keep hydrated more often, but 2, I also just felt like I had more energy during that event. Is I actually use like water flavory stuff, because I know that there are definitely people, and I'll speak to this from this perspective of, there are definitely people who want to go, who don't like drinking water, from the perspective of like, it's bland.
I don't understand that at all.
Says to me, yeah, like, not everyone's like that, Brandon. Get off my back. But those things are like, you can get them that have caffeine in them. So if you're someone who's like, oh, well, I gotta have my caffeine to stay awake, okay, well, that's not an excuse. You should still be drinking water. And the reason is, like, caffeine, soda is like dehydrator. Gatorade, okay, yeah, you're gonna get dehydrated again. But like, just pure water really does help you stay focused.
I do want to tag on to that energy drink tab, because I do always, like, I think caffeine is kind of like a life hack where you do get to your brain to communicate with itself better when you drink caffeine. The downside of that is it does dehydrate you, so then you need to drink even more water. And the thing that I have against soda, and like I think I can see Frank staring at me with his Diet Coke through the monitor.
Yes!
It has a lot of processed sugar in it, and your body just is not built to deal with that properly. It doesn't use it in any meaningful way. If you really,
nutrition podcast.
I mean, this is like from my understanding. My roommate is a nutrition freak in some capacity, and he's taught me a lot. But your body wants sugar, but it wants sugar that it's like really designed to deal with, and that's why I advocate for fruit so heavily. Like if you wake up and just have whatever breakfast you want, eat like 10 pounds of eggs and bacon, but if you just have like an apple with that, your body's going to process that sugar very efficiently, and it's going to give you a lot of energy, especially mentally, which is going to help you do well. And I see Paul in chat saying that he eats fruit at events because of me. It's a proven philosophy.
Paul brings fruit to events and tells me to eat it. He tells me to eat it. He's like, Jeremy, Ryan says to eat this fruit. Eat this fruit. I'm like, okay.
I don't know, man.
So if we're talking about keeping yourselves in a good, healthy mindset, it's also important to remember there's more to it than just like what is mechanically healthy for your body. Like you shirk at me having like Diet Coke because it's delicious and I'm massively addicted to it. But
if you're addicted to it, don't stop doing it. That's
it's also important. Like it's also important to like balance those things with things that you enjoy.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, whatever makes you the best at Force of Will is what you should do because that's
health-wise.
Yeah. It's a balancing act. You don't get healthy just so you can continue to exist. You get healthy so that you can balance it with the things you enjoy.
Yeah, I agree. Everything in moderation.
But I do think we should keep going because this is not a nutrition podcast.
None of us.
This is a nutrition podcast now. We went from normal to Sherry to Lance to nutrition. So this is a nutrition podcast now.
All right, we're moving on.
Point number 4. Point number 4.
All right, this is an important one. This one is, I think, probably the most ignored of all of the points on here. Don't let match outcomes affect your future play.
100%.
Stay cool and don't tilt. You will have losses.
Don't tilt.
Ryan has losses. Things happen where people have bad beats. Then you just draw completely dead. Your opponent hits the nuts. You lose a matchup you should never lose. You misplay accidentally. And sometimes you can walk away from that just fuming, just mad at yourself, just mad at the game, not wanting to play anymore, disappointed in yourself. And sometimes that will carry over into the next game, and you'll play worse because you're thinking about the last game, because you're in a bad mood, because you're not doing well. I see this happen at locals. I see locals players that'll lose one round, get mad about it, and then lose the next round because they just weren't paying attention. Don't let that happen at a GP when you have 7 or 8 or 6 rounds to get through, and if you let the first few ruin the next few, you'll just never top. One thing I like to do when I'm done with a round, I always like to just kind of sit there, especially while I'm de-sideboarding, think about what just happened, think about why it happened, and then just let it go if I lost. Just let it go. Don't carry it over. It's now, there's nothing you can do to affect it. You can't change it at this point. The only thing you can do now is win out from here and try and reduce the odds of any loss or any disappointment affecting you.
And don't let this is also especially important because despite what some of the competitive players I've heard, some of your losses are going to come early in the events. Like in Denver when I topped, I think my first loss was round 2. Like round 2, I just happened to get paired against Zach Tufford, and then I proceeded to just play through the rest of the day just fine. Like I didn't let it get to me and made top. And there have been times where I did tilt off, and it cost me one or both of the last couple of rounds when the pressure was there.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that you've got a 7 to 8 round event that you're looking at. Your losses are going to come, and if they come early, it's just a matter of you're still playing the same number of rounds. It doesn't matter if they come early or late. You still need to win 6 games. So just take it in the stride of, okay, I've already taken my loss. It just means I need to win out. And I tried to look at it as positively as possible to keep my mental state ahead because it is kind of difficult to take a loss early on. At Nationals especially, I lost round 1 with the person I drove with the deck that I gave to him. And that's about as tilting as you can get, but it's still important to just keep focused. And then I ended up losing round 3. So I'm 1 and 2 starting the tournament that I was supposed to have 2 buys in. But you just need to keep in there because it's not there's no real chronology to when you're allowed to lose matches and still top an event. It's just you have a finite number of rounds to play and you have this many losses you're allowed to take. So it's just keeping that kind of mindset that keeps me going in events. And that's my best recommendation. It's just you still got games to play. You know, when you lose, you're in an easier bracket hypothetically. Like that's a really good thing to think about, in my opinion. And just play your game.
I also think that comes back to kind of what we talked about with point number 1 in terms of having realistic goals. I think if you have super unrealistic goals as you walk in, then a loss feels heavier and you're more likely to hold on to it because you've set yourself up for this really high platform that you want to jump onto, which means that every single loss makes it that much harder, as opposed to if you set yourself a realistic goal. Like, for instance, if you set yourself the goal of trying to go more wins than losses, right, and you go into a 7-round event, that means you can do 3 losses and still meet your goal. Like, so then losses don't tilt you as much because you go, okay, that was 1. I can still lose 2 more and still meet my goal. Like, and then you can more set up to do what Brandon said, which is sit there and think about what went wrong, what did I do. If you were constantly walking, like if you walk into your first event being like, I have to top 8, like, congrats, you probably have to go X1-1 for most of the events in Forcible history anyway. X1, I think a couple times X2's made it based on size, but like X1-1 is like kind of the bar, and like if you take 1 loss, then you're like, well, I can only take another draw for the rest of the event, and that is going to put you on edge, like if you don't think about it, or if you allow yourself to get caught up in that. So it can ruin records, it can ruin streaks, it can ruin events to get hyper-fixated on losses, get hyper-fixated on your record, and just let yourself go on tilt. And also, I think another point to that is there is no shame in winning a game match 2-1. It doesn't affect your record. It doesn't affect it at all. Like, if you win a match 2-1, congrats, you won the match. Ta-da! That's all that matters in our game. So, like, don't be pissed off if you lost a game, because if you can win the match, then okay, congrats, you won the match, move on. I think those are 2 points that like really people need to just be more considerate of, and it'll help them be set up to better learn from losses and help them set up to better not beat themselves. So
yeah, tilt's a killer, man. It's something you gotta. That's something that comes with experience, and like you were saying, when you set your goals like to a reasonable level, it's a lot easier to not tilt too much pressure on yourself. Then when you lose, you feel that pressure, and then it's like, oh man, like that will make you misplay more. When you just go there to have fun, rule number 1, when you just go there to have fun, then you're able to distance yourself from the mistakes that you made that caused that loss, and then you're able to play more relaxed, which will enable you to play better. So just trying to keep the pressure off of yourself. Like, you're not in top 8 just because you took a loss, Like, once you get to top 8, that's when the pressure's on, and it's gonna be difficult to like distance yourself from it. But when you take a loss round 1, it's just 1 game, and you just need to like reset your mind to like it's just a game. Like, just
at least relax. If you lose in top 8, then it won't be able to affect the rest of your rounds.
That's true. Yeah, because you're done.
I guess sort of like piggybacking on like being there to have fun and stuff. The other thing I would suggest is like, especially if this is your first GP, even if you've taken enough losses that you've like missed out on your goal, if you can get yourself in a mindset where you're still willing to play the rest of the event and just play out the event, like meet some more people, play some more fun games, because like you're gonna be in the brackets where you're gonna get to see the cool. Like if that happens, you're in the cool stuff brackets.
Yeah, the
like,
shenanigans decks.
Just realized that what I just said wasn't even true. At the very first GP this year, I was in top 4 against Aaron, and Aaron beat me in game 3, and I got so tilted that I forgot about the game I had to play with Ryan for 3rd and 4th, and I just left because I was so
disappointed. I wanted to play against Bremont for the first time in tournament, and he left me.
So that's
left me at the altar.
Hey, you got a free bronze Keurig, man. You got a free bronze Keurig.
But I wanted to play. I didn't get to play against Brandon in tournament, which is really
playing against Brandon is a treat.
I'm very talkative.
Yes, it is absolutely delightful. But yeah, like it's important to like not running into, I guess, like not running into Jeremy's story, where like it's part of the whole like don't just like not go there alone, but like do the best you can to make like positive experiences out of the event. Like you've traveled there not just to like compete, but also to have fun and to like do something that you enjoy. Like this is what you do for fun, for etc. And so like make sure that it's an event you get the most out of the event, because that will make the practice before the next event, where you're just doing the grunt work that's less enjoyable, more palatable. It's going to make you more excited for the next event, and then you're going to have more fun at the next event. Like, it's something that definitely builds.
Yeah, and I can speak to a little bit about, again, back to point number one of like you said, Frank, like, don't be afraid to just play it out and meet people and enjoy it. And it comes back to like realistic expectations of what you want to get out of an event. I think for me I do not try to claim that this is something that everyone has experienced, and I know that with the channel, like, I have definitely been graced with some very unique opportunities and very different unique positioning in the community. But for me, playing card games was all about, like, I want to be known, I want to be recognized, I want to top events and have people know who I am, I want to go to events and have people know who I am. Like, that was my driving force when I was in Yu-Gi-Oh! And then that was one of the reasons why walking into that regional when I didn't top, nobody knew who I was when I showed up, nobody knew who I was when I left. So that was an awful experience for me, and that was an unrealistic, unhealthy expectation of myself. And I think I know myself well enough to know that that is still something that, like, drives me, is that I, like, want to be known. And I have been blessed in the fact of, with the channel, like, people know me from the channel. So having that unhealthy expectation of my life and that I put on myself made me better prepared to be able to enjoy my events, because I was able to go into an event, like, with that, like, check marked and just be like, okay, I'm done. I can just focus on just making the most out of this event. And so I think it's also really important to say, like, what might be some unhealthy expectations you have for yourself, or what might be some unhealthy goals you have for yourself going into a GP that you might want to check at the door so that they don't get in the way of your event.
I do want to hijack this conversation and put in, like, one of my things that I think you should do at your first GP, and that is just try and make friends. It can be very intimidating, just like say that as a statement, but it's actually super easy because you're going to an event where everyone is super passionate about the same thing. I already talked about how you can just approach any judge and get their life story at Fortsville, and it's great. But like, you're playing against 7 people. Like, your round one opponent, whether you win or lose, just like after every couple of rounds, be like, hey man, what's your record? How you doing? Just like get into a conversation, because they're going to have bad beat stories that they're going to want to tell anyone who will listen, and just be a listener. And then boom, it's like, oh cool, this, like, it's so unfortunate that it happened, and you're my tiebreaker, so this is like a relevant mutual interest that I want to listen to your story. Like, it's just the easiest thing to do because everyone's there to have a good time. And you can even approach people that you know, like from Facebook and from YouTube and from this podcast. Like, I may look like a human, but I'm actually just an ego in a human suit, and I live for when people come up to me at events and say, hey man, I know you from YouTube, my name's so-and-so, and I really like your stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm no Jeremy Franklin, I know, but God, that just made my entire day. And I just try and, like, it just, like, makes me so happy, and I try and, like, keep tabs on that person, like, as much as possible, because I want to know, like, the people that really, like, support what I do and just, like, know who I am, and I've never known you. Like, it's just the coolest thing to me. So, like, it's very easy to make friends in this game, and almost any card game, but especially with how tight-knit and close this community is, just make friends. It's easy to do. Yep. I know it sounds like a big, tall order, but that would be my number one.
And lest you get worried that everyone is like those two and just like in this for the fame and the stardom. Some of us are frankly terrified every time. Frankly, like when we sit down and like, if any of you want to pretend that you don't know who I am, totally on point for this.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, having realistic understanding of yourself, I think, can go really, and what might be those kind of like behind the scenes drives, and keeping those in mind and keeping those in check can actually influence your experience of an event. So I think that's like the psychologist in me saying, like, let's go a little bit below the surface. Like, there's a little bit of deeper stuff going on, and just make sure you have kind of that thought out.
And also, processed. You would be surprised, like, how easy it is to make, like, long-term friends at your first GP. 100%. Victor was the one who knocked me out of contention to my first GP, and we talk all the time now. He's one of my very good friends. And then also my first GP after that, the next round was running into Quinn Kateki, and just from there, I just continued to try and beat him every event till finally I finally California last year.
I have a great story, actually. Oh, Brandon, do you want to say something first?
Oh, I was just going to say the next time I play against Frank, I'm going to pretend like I don't know who he is.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. my first GP, I played against Alex Blandon, having no idea who he was, and it's kind of funny because I love telling the story to him all the time. I 2-0'd him in the Bahamut mirror after losing the die roll, and it was my first Bahamut mirror of the day, and I texted my brother after that round, and I said, hey man, I don't think Forceful players are very good. I might be able to top this event. And it was because I just blasted Blandon, having no idea who he was, because he just played like an ape and went like Cthulhu turn 1, and I'm like, you have a 3-card hand, and I'm Bahamut, like I'm just gonna kill you, haha. And that's my... And now, you know, me and Blandon are like arch nemesis today, so you never know who you're gonna meet, you know.
Yeah.
Arch nemesis.
Yeah, he's my arch rival, arch nemesis.
Shall I tell us about the first GP I ever played at?
Yeah, go for it. And then we can jump on. And then we can jump onto point 5.
Okay, so this is actually kind of the opposite of that story. I didn't make day 2 at Florida 2 years ago, and so I played at the ARG, and me and Aaron were in the finals of the ARG, and Ryan actually won this GP, and he won it while we were playing the finals of that event. And I had no idea who Aaron was. I had no idea who Ryan was. Never heard of these people. Didn't know they were related. And so the game ends, and whoever's announcing or whatever announces that, like, and the winner of your GP is Ryan Miles. And Aaron just deadpan looks at me and says, "Fuck that guy." And I just thought he was like the meanest person. And I remember, like, I told Aaron off. I didn't really tell him off, but I was like, "That's rude. You shouldn't say that about someone." So I'm just like a nice guy, and I had no idea they were related. And Aaron just goes like this. Just doesn't give me any explanation at all. Just keep playing. And I just thought Aaron was the biggest dick.
Oh, he is. Don't let that sway you. He definitely is.
Oh, goodness gracious. I don't have any silly stories like that. Sorry, guys.
We'll make some at Worlds. Don't worry.
There you go. Sure. Come crashing into my stream studio. So point 5. Point number 5. The last of our 5 points to how to make a new you for the GP season.
All right, I like this one a lot. This one's kind of a sub thing, but I think it's very important. And that's be polite, be respectful, and expect it from your opponents. I always offer a handshake anytime I lose. I think it's very polite and respectful. If an opponent asks me questions about what's going on, I always tell them. In Force of Will, you don't have to show your opponent the backside of your ruler if you don't want to, but since they can always find it with a judge anyway, you should always just show them. Just be a nice, pleasant, respectful person. Be the kind of person that when someone plays against you, they want to come back and play again. This isn't to make you better. This isn't to increase your wins. This isn't even necessarily to increase the amount of fun that you have at a GP, but it's just being a good human. I think more people could stand to be this. I've played against way too many people in Force of Will that after they lose, they don't extend the hand. They're just very grumpy. They swap all their cards up and walk away. And I just encourage everyone to avoid that behavior if at all possible. Just go into it ready to be the kind of person that other people want to be around, because you're in a room of 150 people and you want that of everyone else.
Yeah, and I think that speaks back to the kind of point that I made earlier, is that you're not sure, you're in a sense you have an opponent, right? But ultimately, when the two of you sit down, you are entering into a contract to engage with each other in this transaction of playing this game. And so I think that it is very important to view your opponent as an equal, in the sense that you are both people, you both have feelings, you both have emotions, but you're also you both have to be at this table for us to play this game. So even if I lose to you, even if I beat you, I couldn't have had that experience, I couldn't have had that game if you weren't sitting down with me. So I'm going to thank you for it. Like, I'm still going to say, like, thank you for being my partner and engaging me with this kind of situation. And I think that there's a lot of people, especially when I played Yu-Gi-Oh! And I haven't really experienced it a ton from Force of Will. I've experienced it a little. But there have been definitely players in my Yu-Gi-Oh! Days where if I lost, my opponent didn't see me as a person. They had done what they needed to do. They had beaten me. They were ready to move on. And, like, that sucks. Like, that feels bad. It's like, okay, I guess it makes you feel like not a person. It makes you feel undervalued, and it takes away from enjoying the game. So because I've experienced that, I actively work against making my opponent feel that way. Like, when you sit down, I'm going to shake your hand and say thanks for the game. I'm going to, I'm going to talk to you as we're getting set up. I'm going to have a good time. I'm going to be respectful. If you have questions about things, I'm going to be respectful, that kind of thing. I mean, like, obviously some things with an expectation, like, I'm not going to let you take back a move if it's like a super important match or something like that. Like, because I'm upholding the sanctity of the game in that regards, but I'm still going to treat you with respect. I'm not going to laugh at you making a misplay. I'm not going to be that, because I've been on the receiving end of that, and it takes away all of the fun out of the game. And ultimately, you have to have that person sitting down across from you, otherwise you're just not doing anything. So like, they're your partner in the game, so treat them as such.
Well, yeah, more than just that, they're not just like this like equal you've got across from you. Like in the U.S., we've got this like, I mean, it's a fairly large community, but like let's say we've got, I guess you might know the numbers, but we'll say hypothetically we've got 300,000 players. That is 300,000 players in the millions of people in the U.S. Like I live near a pretty large city, and there's probably only like, 30 to like 40 active players around here. And so like the number of people who can share this with you is pretty low. They aren't just like they're like as like, oh, it's an equal. It's like they're your ally in this. Like you need everyone for this game. You need everyone to have fun. You need everyone for the game to succeed. Like it's to everyone's benefit for everyone to have a good time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when you think about it mathematically, which is a very pretentious way to begin this argument,
Bring it up.
Like, you're spending your weekend to go to this event, and it is a competition, and you are trying to win, but, like, ultimately, what's the prize you're playing for? For Forcible, right, it's, like, some prize cards, it's a trip to Japan. Like, if you just wanted to go to Japan and, like, to purchase these prize cards from the people who actually won it, you could just, instead of going to this event this weekend, and all of those hours you spent playtesting, you could just get a second job, and you'd be able to afford it. But, like, you're putting the time into this game specifically because you enjoy it. And because you want to have fun with this time, and like that's the ultimate goal, right? Like it's not just like, oh, how can I spend my time most efficiently to win this prize that I really want? No, it's because you want to enjoy the time that you're spending with other people, and that's what everyone wants to do. So making sure that other people have an enjoyable experience will make it so that they want to make sure that you have an enjoyable experience. That's all it boils down to. You want to have fun. That's why we play games instead of working more to get these results. So have fun with it and make sure that everyone else is having a good time too.
Yeah, fun is not zero sum. Everyone can have fun, even the winner. So,
for sure,
absolutely.
Taylor Norris asks, someone explain to him what fun is.
Well,
F is for friends that do stuff. Yeah,
there we go. I was thinking the same thing. It's copyrighted. It's copyrighted music. I don't want to get demonetized.
I didn't know you were gonna do the lead into it. I was ready to go, man. I
had like the setup ready, and then Ryan just like takes it.
I'm so sorry. It would have been so much better with setup.
To speak to another question that Taylor had earlier is like thoughts of Forcible Company pumping alcohol into players the night before Worlds. I will quickly answer that question by saying the Forcible Company doesn't view Worlds. I mean, it's a competition, yes, but it's a party and a celebration, and so they want to make sure that people have a super fun time. So they don't mind providing free alcohol to do that. Ta-da! Congratulations. There's the reasoning behind it. It has nothing to do with the competition.
You should be able to tell by the CR that they don't care about the competition. So.
Hey, segue.
Segue.
We have 10 minutes. Let's talk about the CR for 10 minutes.
We can talk about this in 10 minutes. Any more than 10 minutes, and I'm going to get put on a list where Forcible just wants somebody to never come to their events because I'm so upset. Ah!
So Ryan.
So I'm gonna preface the fact that if we're gonna have a conversation about the CR, we have to think of the CR outside of Worlds format because it's irrelevant for anyone not at Worlds.
It's even worse outside of Worlds.
It's even worse outside of Worlds.
It just randomly limits deck building obnoxiously. Like it stops the Tears of the Fallen problem, which like cool, but this is like I think the worst way they could have done it, and I'm upset. Let's someone else talk. I want to go last as per usual.
So Ryan gets to be like what I was for Runes, where I was just like uselessly negative about it. I mean,
Brandon,
there's just not a whole lot to talk about.
I guess. Hold on.
So let me go over exactly what has been updated with.
I'm saying, do you want me to do the Cliff Notes version?
Yeah, Frank, go ahead. Go ahead and update us the Cliff Notes.
So this is going to be slightly abbreviated. This won't be in like the legal speak of the CR, but runes that are not chance in your rune deck have to match your ruler's color. They cleared up the remove from game shenanigans that could have involved invert cards and the black-red Gil Lapis. We didn't really run into this, but basically there were scenarios where it created an illegal game. They fixed that. They cleared up the rules discrepancy between the Keurig X-Cost thing and other X-Cost stuff. Basically, you can do it like we've been doing it in the US the whole time. They did a whole bunch of clarifications in the copy section. They added new keywords, including divinity. They added the rune deck, and so then we should just explain divinity. It's a mechanic your ruler has. It's on both sides. It is part of the cost of playing a rune. So to play a rune from your rune deck, you flip it face up, pay its mana cost, pay its divinity cost, and you only have the divinity of basically have a remaining divinity of your ruler's divinity minus what you've already revealed. So if you've already revealed 5 worth and your ruler has 10, you have 5 remaining divinities, so you can flip up any 1, 2, or 3 and pay that much. I think that's the short version.
You cannot sideboard runes.
Oh, sorry, yes, that's from the
rune deck. The rune deck itself, the 5 cards that you pick for your
sideboarded.
rune deck at the beginning of the game cannot be side decked. You cannot change them. Also, you can only have 1 master rune per rune deck, which means you can't be playing both Loki and Arthur, put both of their master runes in the rune deck, and then have access to both master runes if you sideboard. So that's an important distinction. The other thing is every deck, regardless of if it is a divinity ruler or not, can bring a rune deck into an event. If you were playing a ruler without divinity, you just don't get to use your rune deck during the course of that game. But if you sideboard into a ruler that has divinity, then you get access to your rune deck.
It does not matter at the moment, but every ruler already, like, regardless of whether they have divinity, actually has a rune deck. If you bring one that has 0 cards, there is still a 0-card deck sitting there. That's not relevant right now, but if something ever interacts with the rune deck, like, hypothetically some card puts the top card of your library into the rune deck for some obscure reason, like some really weird mill strategy they add, that it still exists.
Okay.
So, that is the Cliff Notes. Brandon, what are your thoughts? Remember, this is specifically talking about New Frontiers, not Worlds format, because Worlds format is irrelevant outside of Worlds format.
Well, I mean, it's not like, I mean, Cluster is still going to be a thing eventually.
Okay, Cluster will be a thing in 2 more set releases after this one. So let's specifically talk about...
In New Frontiers, you're dramatically limiting these divinity rulers, which I think were already really limited. I have to briefly talk about Worlds, I apologize, but like, the card pool for Worlds is so small that we're not going to get 15 cards to be in our sideboard anyway that are actually relevant. And it's going to be now even less now that we can't even sideboard runes, which were, like, in some ways, some options for beating certain decks. I mean, this just, like, absolutely shot the red deck in the legs. Like, the red deck was so reliant on it changing the rune deck that deck's just completely unplayable now. Not that it was playable anyway because of machines, but digression. There really is just no reason for this besides allowing them to print runes that have a cost of 0 that they don't want in other decks. I mean, that really is legitimately the only reason, is not letting Hanzo be played with blue runes and not letting Tears of the Fallen be played in non-black decks. And also the one that reanimates a human was like pretty good for the red deck, and now they just like, took that away from them too. For just like no real reason. Like I don't really see what they gained from this besides like random. What?
I was gonna say if one of us if one of us always has to play the argumentative one opposed, I would actually say that this one feels like good future proofing. Like if they really intend to carry runes, like if they're just doing runes for this cluster.
Future proofing is what it is. Like I understand the future proofing, but there's just like ways to do it other than this. Namely, just like not making broken runes that could be played in other decks. But I apologize, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, it future-proofs dual stones, which is great once we get dual stones. But for New Frontiers right now, when we don't have dual stones, it just makes my eyes roll so far back that I'm doing slot machines, where I'm just so like, it just limits the ability of things you can do without actually giving you any interesting decisions to make like otherwise. Like it's just limiting with no like. Limited in this aspect, but you get this instead. It's just, okay, here's what you could have had, but we're going to take this away because that would be too complicated or just be too fun. Like, it feels awful that they did this because the red deck wanted to play the white rune. Like, there's just so many cool things you could do by crossing colors once you get dual stones. And
Does anyone know, like, why we can't sideboard runes? Is there, like, any good reason for that at all that anyone wants to do?
I think it was broken and cherry, I guess. It's too much to think about between games. Like, you see your opponents... Like, that's the only thing I can think of is, like, for new players. Like, you see your opponent's rune deck game 1, you're like, oh, man, like...
Makes you guess the meta.
Yeah.
Makes you guess the meta.
Like, even if there is, like, a perfect 5-card rune deck, like, it could very dynamically shift in between games. So it just becomes like this really obnoxious thing you have to play around, where you're always playing around like 20 rune options your opponent could have, but now like once you see game one, it's just like, okay, I know what their runes are. I'm not worried about them sideboarding into some random posers for my deck, and maybe they don't even sideboard them, and I'm playing around it, but it's not there.
So doesn't that just take away from the fact that the rune deck can't just be a deck of whatever 5 silver bullets I need to kill you?
Yeah, I do like that because wasn't that part of the Scheherazade problem?
Exactly. Scheherazade was these 2 silver bullets weren't good against your deck, so I guess I'll side in the 2 silver bullets that I have in my sideboard that were better.
They almost printed next to none like silver bullet cards though.
Yeah.
Really
right. I mean, this may be a case. This may be a case of overcorrecting. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I can understand where that capacity is. This may be a take of overcorrecting.
Like the laziest way to solve this possible. Like the real solution here is just don't print broken cards. Don't print silver bullets that would ruin a format. But instead, they're just like
they did both.
Just in case we do that, just in case we decide to, we'll make it so that that it's completely uninteresting to think about sideboarding these runes because it's not possible. I just don't think it's the way that they should have approached it. But I mean, I guess it's better than breaking it.
The rune lock thing definitely feels like they're like with the color lock. Either they're trying to fix Worlds format and failed abysmally, or they're just really worried about dual stones, and this was their solution to that. It seems like because Wanderer is still a format that Jeff kind of cares about, like that might be the optimal solution, and it's what I think is what happened, and it's just a very unfortunate side effect that in trying to prevent dual stones from being a problem with rune decks, they also just completely murdered Worlds format, almost even worse than it was already. Because before we just had Hanzo Machines had the Sealing Scroll and maintenance, but now it's Hanzo Machines doesn't play maintenance, and then Loki or / Arthur Machines does play maintenance, but in like the head-to-head, like Sealing Scroll just negates maintenance, and it's just like an actual mirror, except for one deck has a J ruler. But like Hanzo, even without maintenance, just like obliterates everything else so handily because you're just this aggressive like Hearthstone aggro deck where you're like overstat a minion turn 1, overstat a minion turn 2, overstat a minion plus removal on 3, and then I kill everything you play unless you can kill my one guy. Oh, but I play like 9 copies of Lancelot because I've got 4 Lance, 4 Merlin, and a Scrappin' build in my extra. So it's just like there's nothing consistent enough to keep all 4 Lancelot from your opponent's deck from hitting the board and sticking. And then because the Hanzo rune is there to protect it, where you have to pay mana to try and kill Lancelot with a rune, they negate it and then hit you for 30 because their 1-drops are 8/8s. There's just, it's very, like, difficult to beat Hanzo Machines, even without maintenance. So now it's just like this weird meta game where do you play Hanzo Machines and beat everything, or do you play like Loki Machines so that you can have a turn 5 advantage against Hanzo, but you sometimes lose to other stuff? It's just like it's just such a weird meta game they've created by doing these changes, and it doesn't feel good.
And on that note,
well, no. I would like to note that I have actually been looking at New Frontiers, and I am really excited. Like, obviously, every meta has the chance to just shake out in the initial stuff. There were too many things that just lost to a specific thing, and it rises to power. But at the moment, like, it really does look cool. Like even though we're limited to the largely monocolor decks, there's a lot of things you can do within them. The new runes the rune rules put some limits on what you can do with them, but like they do still allow you to move back and forth. Like I've been playing with a couple lists that like move back and forth between like Imul and Brunhild, and it just looks like super fun. Like there is a lot of deck building rune left, and that's part of the reason like I'm not so like worried about it, is that like outside of like what World format shook out to be with this very small card pool, the rules do seem to be have a chance to do a good job of like balancing these long term and like balancing these in a simple way that's very hard to accidentally mess up. And they do still leave a lot of room for deck building. We still leave a lot of room for experimenting. And like I have legitimately enjoyed just like writing up. Been busy enough. I haven't posted as much as I'd like, but I've like really enjoyed like messing around with like brewing up lists, and hopefully I will get some of these ready for people to read soon.
For sure. I think the CR change is going to make my job of Worlds, of showing as little machines as possible until top cut, easier. And I apologize for you guys playing at Worlds that it's Lancelot is still going to be a very dominant card in that format. I wish it was different. But like, I actually am very excited about what New Frontiers has in store with this CR being what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of over it. I wanted to complain real quick, but like, it is what it is. I'm not really playtesting that much for
Playing for day 2.
Worlds format. I'm playing for day 2 because I have a title to defend on day 2. That is way more important than becoming a world champion. I need to maintain my role as making the finals as best loser. But yeah, New Frontiers feels like healthy, and I know that like the Europeans are super far ahead on this, so I might just be like wrong because I'm just learning the format from scratch in the past 2 weeks. But like, there's a lot going on in New Frontiers that I'm pretty happy about. The new rulers don't seem to have too much impact yet, but I could have overlooked something, and I think that next set will definitely see them pick up when they get more support, more cards. So overall, I think the game is turning around. I just want to complain a little bit because I think that the premier event of the entire world is just going to fall a little bit flat, which is just unfortunate.
It's a glorified pre-release.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right? That's all you can really say about it.
Yep.
Hopefully it ends up. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong.
Sounds good to me. Brandon, any final thoughts before we close out today?
Oh no, I think that's fine. I'm glad they keyworded Eternal and Bane. I think that's kind of cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm slightly terrified by the fact that Bane just kills J-Rulers, but I will learn to live with this.
I think that's like the coolest way to kill J-Rulers. I want them to get rid of every card that says kill target J-Ruler. I want it to be Bane Resonators and exclusively runes. And then like awakenings on like Oborozuki and stuff. Just like make it kind of difficult, but don't make it inaccessible. You know what I mean?
No. Oborozuki is super cool. It's just, I guess I sort of like J-Rulers enough that I don't really like the idea that they're just like trivial to kill. And so some small housefly having Bane irks me.
I love that because then it becomes this like game where you can stop like, as long as the Bane Resonators don't have precision. I love it. Like, it's so interesting the way Force Will's combat works, that there's a lot of cool things you can do to try and get a Bane Resonator into a J-Ruler or get a J-Ruler away from a Bane Resonator. That's just super interesting to me.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
when you start adding swiftness and precision into it, that's when you start getting problems, but they haven't done that, so I'm happy so far.
Also, remind me real quick, because it's been a little bit since I've read through this one. Is Bane just limited to combat damage?
No.
Yeah, it's whenever this
When
card
it
deals
deals
damage.
damage, yeah.
But I don't think they're going back. And
Oh, great.
It's not like the stuff that had when this card deals damage is suddenly now having Bane.
It's a real shame that what's it called? Diversity Village doesn't just say symbol skills. So like, I really want Diversityville to give Bane an Eternal, and it's kind of a shame that it doesn't.
If your ruler has Eternal, all your stuff has Eternal. Can't ever kill my board. Sounds good.
Your ruler has Bane, all your Resonators have Bane.
Ooh, gross.
Yeah, Lucifer has Bane, right? Or
That's
not Lucifer.
Lich.
So that is it for us for tonight, everyone. This is going to be the last Teachers Lounge until we all get back from World. So we'll probably be 3 weeks. Because we'll all be traveling and during Japan.
Well, you guys are all going to be here next
unless
week.
we do something live from Japan, at which point we'd all be super very tired, and we'll have to see what happens timeline-wise. But next week I'll announce it here. Next week is Takeover Week for the channel as well. So we have different Force of Will channels who are going to be taking over different days of the week to give you guys content. And so next week, Teachers Lounge is going to be replaced by the TCG Scrubs podcast. So be sure to come over here to get their podcast on your Monday. So huge thanks to them for participating in that. And as always, this has been a wonderful time. Be sure to go down below and check out the links to support the channel to help us be able to do more stuff like this more consistently and at higher quality, as well as be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell so you're notified whenever we go live with this, as well as any of our videos. And until next time, this has been DMO73, and I have been joined by, as always, the wonderful Brian Miles.
That's me, everybody.
The fantastic Brandan Bremont.
You in the top of Japan.
And the spectacular Frank Klosser.
Brought to you by Diet Coke.
And we will see you guys next week. Have a good one, everybody.